Like 2 days ago.
It's in Israel.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Lamed Ches. Lamed Ches. So we actually got a little bit down from the top. So we're discussing the prohibition of Chadash, of the new grains. One is required to go ahead and wait until after the Yom is brought in order to be able to eat the new grains. We had a Shaila, the Machlekes, and Machlekes Adi Yom Hazeh, in terms of whether it applies in Chutz La'aretz or just in Eretz Yisrael. So, and then we brought a case as Machlekes tonight in terms of when they ate the when they went into Eretz Yisrael, the next day they seemed to eat the new grains, and so it was machlokes as to whether that they're b'dafka waiting for it because it was forbidden before, or that's when the mun ran out, and therefore they were forced to have the new grains. So we got to Tani Ida and Chesed ben Aleph, maybe I don't know, I would say 25.
The first and second.
The first 28% down. You can go ahead. I say maybe 30.
Lines.
Yeah. All right. So 11 lines in the top.
Yeah.
Fine.
I have to go.
So Tani Ida.
Swimming in
So
the
Tani
actual,
Ida. We learn another brayso of Bnei Yisrael. Similar, we learn a brayso of Bnei Yisrael Achlos Haman Arbim Shana, and the Bnei Yisrael ate from the man 40 years while in the desert. So the Gemara says, did they go ahead and eat the man for 40 years? If you go ahead and calculate it, so it was really they began to go ahead and what's it called, and have it from before, right? In other words, when they got it, they ate the man up until the month before. In other words, 1 second, right? In other words, because it says there, chaser shloshim. All right, so it says up until 40 days. In other words, when they got to Midbar Sin, right? So it says over there that was on the 15th, on the second month, right? So in other words, they got to the 15th of the second month, and therefore they right, it was a month after they left, and therefore that's when it began. So therefore, if you calculate up until Nisan, right? In other words, when they had over there, that was 40 years minus 30 days. So no, the first 30 days actually when they left, the foods that they took from what's it called, from Mitzrayim, those tasted like the man. So really, it was almost like immediately when they left Mitzrayim was when they had the man, even though it wasn't the miraculous man, rather the foods that they took and the stuff from Mitzrayim tasted like the man.
Amen.
So Tani Ida, we learn another rise up. B'shivi Madar Meis Moshe, on the 7th of Adar, Moshe Rabbeinu made B'shivi Madar Noila, and he was also born on the 7th of Adar. So Benayin B'shivi Adar Meis, Shnaz Bazik says, Vayamas Sham Moshe Aved Hashem, and Moshe died over there. Aved Hashem V'ksivu Vayivku B'nei Yisrael Moshe B'Arvas Moav Shloshim Yom. It said over there, they're in Arvas Moav before they crossed over, they were there for 30 days mourning. It says it was after the death. Moshe Avdi Meis Viata Akum Avur. It says now my servant has died, and I'll go cross. So they said we're going to be crossing over into Eretz Yisrael in another 3 days. And Tavros Yarden, then they crossed the Yarden. So it says they crossed the Yarden on the 10th of Nisan. Okay, so it's Semehem. So if you go ahead and calculate, I'll do it in a second. 33 days, because it says over there. So if you go backwards, right? So 3 days prepare, And that 3 days from fair came after, that was said immediately after the 30-day mourning period. So you have 33 days, you calculate 33 days from the 10th of Nisan, it goes back to Zayin Adar. So therefore he was born. So it's including that day, right? So it's right, including that day, because therefore that would get you to 33.
Crossed over the 10th of Nisan?
Yes,
So it
right.
wasn't a total 4 year there, it was 15, so it's 5 days short to begin with.
In terms of the month.
No, I'm saying in terms of the Midbar, they were 5 days short.
In terms of the what?
Being in the Midbar.
Right.
Was 4 or 5 days.
I guess
short.
right. They cost it right. So
There's something that says that if you start, the reason for that was because it was from the day that they did equipment.
for the right, which is in the Shabbos Agad over there on the 10th, right? Yeah. So we say 30 days. So therefore we go calculating back. We see that it was from the 7th of Adar when he was nifter. How do you know it was the 7th of Adar he was born? So Moshe Shneimar, as the pasuk says, "Vayomer aleim ben meya v'esim shana anochi hayayim v'uchol latzeis v'lava." Now it says over there because today it says I'm 120 years today, and I can no longer, go forward. Shein Tamalam Hayam was common teacher Hayam. This is just today. So Matalam Hayam. So Mlami Chakolish Baruch Hu Yoshim Malish Nasayim Shal Tzadikim Yom Yom Cholish Cholish. Chakolish Baruch Hu fills the days and the months and the years of Tzadikim Shemar as Mispar Yamecha Malay. Right, that he will make his days full. In other words, therefore, it was a full 120 years. And Tanya, we learned in the Brayso of Shimon ben Yochai Omer. So now going back a little bit to the topic. Shlosh mitzvahs nitztav yisah b'knisas la'aretz. There were 3 mitzvahs that they were commanded once they entered the land. V'nohegas bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz haaretz. And it wasn't something that's just most of the mitzvahs they were commanded to do in the land. In other words, let's say to do with agriculture in terms of that. So those things were commanded. But there are 3 things that are also commanded with the land that will survive, even though there are no both bein ba'aretz bein b'chutz haaretz. But then Shinagu, and also you can make a logical argument why this should be noig, such as Ma Chodesh Ein Isur Israel Ein Isur Isur Hana V'Yesh Heter L'Isuro. So by Chodesh, where it's not a permanent Isur, so we said the Chodesh, let's say the grains grow, let's say they start growing in the fall and the winter, so they're prohibited up until the carbon omer is brought. So it's not an Isur Olam. And there's no Isser Hana. You're allowed to get Hana from Chadash. V'yesh heter l'Isura. In other words, when they're Usser, once you go ahead and you bring the korban, now they're Moter. So there's a heter the Isser, and that is Noheg bein ba'aretz bein l'chutz haaretz. And according to this Tana, right? So it is Noheg both in Eretz Yisrael and l'chutz haaretz. So kilayim. So a mixture, let's say a vineyard and wheat, she'surn Israelam. That their Isser is forever. There's no way, right? The Isur Isser Hana, right? That you can't even get Hana from it. They ain't had to Isur. And once something is Kilayim, there's no way to go ahead and permit it. And it didn't. Shina go bein ba'aretz bein l'chutz haaretz. Certainly, it should be noeg Kilayim in Eretz Yisrael and l'chutz haaretz. But within Orla and so too by Orla b'shtayim. 2 of these apply in terms of the Isser Hana. And there is no heter to the Isser, because once something is Orla, it's forever Orla, but it's not Isser the other, because after a certain amount of years, or 3 years, then, or into the 4th, right, 5th year, then it becomes permitted. And Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon, says, Ho, mitzvah shenisav Yisrael, kaidem ki yisasim la'aretz, any mitzvah they were commanded before they entered the land, no heges bein ba'aretz bein l'chutz haaretz, there is no egg, something we just saw before, and Eretz Yisrael, and also Chutz Haaretz. However, once they enter the land, the only noeg is in the land. Chutz mean hashmatas ksafim, the shiluach avodim, except for the canceling of loans of debt by shmita, which is also noeg by Chutz Haaretz, and also having Avadim go free at Yovel. All right. So that also applies. So the Shilach Avadim that applies also in the case of for that Eved Ivri who stayed until the Yovel to send them off. Shafish and stuff and even though that these things were only commanded after they entered the land, nevertheless, these are knowing both in Eretz Yisrael and Chutzars. So Gemara says, understand the canceling alone has nothing to do with the land, isn't it the chiyuv on the individual? So Gemara says, no, like actually needed for this brisa, the order of this brisa. The Tanya learned a brisa Rabbi Yomer. V'zeh hadavar hashmita shamut. Right, so it says over there the double lashon. Right, v'zeh hadavar hashmita. Right, shema kol bal masha yodo. Right, so it says over there the double lashon. So v'shtei shmitos hakasam adabir. So the pasuk is referring to two types of cancellations. Right, achas shmitos karka. Right, the cancellation of the resting of the land. V'achas shmitos kasafim, and also the cancellation of loans. So bisman sha'ata mishamit karka, when you're mishamit the karka, when you're in Eretz Yisrael and you leave the land, then sa'ata mishamit ksafim, then you go ahead and you cancel. That's no longer cancel. Bisman she'ata mishamit karka, but when you're not going ahead and being mishamit the karka, then yeta mishamit ksafim, right? Then you're not going ahead and canceling loans, right? So we see that when shmita is being noheg, that's when this. So in other words, before then, right? So even though it was a chayvas haguf, it wasn't commanded until they got to Eretz Yisrael and started observing Shemitah. So the Gemara says, maybe it means b'makom she'atam mishamei karka, atam mishamei ksafim, b'makom she'ein atam mishamei karka, ein atam mishamei ksafim. Maybe it means like this: only places where you observe Shemitah of the land, i.e., in Eretz Yisrael, does the loan cancellations occur. But maybe b'chutz la'aretz it doesn't occur at all. Even the Shemitah is being observed in Eretz Yisrael, so any loan in Chicago would be okay. The Tamaloymar, kikari Shemitah l'Hashem. So it says over there, because it's called Shemitah l'Hashem mikol makom, and anywhere, that was any place, that is where the Shemitah is kasafim, and therefore it doesn't make a difference as long as Shemitah, going back, as long as Shemitah is being observed in Eretz Yisrael, then Shemitah kasafim applies even chutz la'aretz. And then we said shiluach avadim, sending of the avadim to go free. But once again, the Gemara says, chavas hagufi. It's a chavas haguf. It's on the person, nothing to do with the land. So talk about that. So we know it says across on Jaror Ba'aretz, right? You go ahead and you call, was it liberty, right? And then in the land, freedom in the land. So Ba'aretz in b'chutz aretz lo. It sounds like only, in other words, that the Yovel only seems to apply in Eretz Yisrael. Right, but not chutz la'aretz. So Tamaloymar there it says Yovel he. It says Yovel. It's Yovel everywhere. Mikol makom. Same case. Ma Tamaloymar ba'aretz. As that's the case. Why I say ba'aretz in the land? It sounds like Eretz Yisrael. So bisman shadro noheg ba'aretz. When the Yovel is being observed in Eretz Yisrael, then noheg b'chutz la'aretz. Then the halachas are observed in chutz la'aretz, i.e., even the sending off of the avadim. However, ein draba noheg ba'aretz. However, if there is no draba ba'aretz, then there's no chutzars, right? We know that even though there might be some in Israel, but the Yovel is observed when you have the Shvatim who are inhabiting the land of Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, if that's not occurring, then it's not noy b'chutzars. So therefore, right? So according to this, you would say that you would not send him. So therefore, that's why it's not a chov on the individual. So Tan Hasam, Hachadash Asr min Torah, according to this author, Hachadash Asr min Torah, B'chol Makom. So Chadash is Asr min Torah, right? B'chol Makom, another even the chutzarts. And Orla is halacha that it applies even in chutzarts. V'Kilayim midivrei sefer. Kilayim is divrei sefer. So my halacha. Let's concentrate on the second one. And the chutzarts, right? Excuse me, thank you. So he says, now Orla's halach. So he says halacha. So Orla's halacha that applies in chutzar. So my halacha. So Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel, Hilchasa Medina. Right, it was something that was noeg, by the community. So in other words, it wasn't something that was not, i.e., it's not halacha l'Moshe Misina. Right, so Hilchasa Medina, basically like divrei sefer. Ulo Amar Rabbi Yechon halacha l'Moshe Misina. No. Orla b'chutzar is halacha l'Moshe Misina. And Amarle Ula Rav Yehuda Sabish Lamala Didi Ula says, you know what? It makes sense according to me that the halacha, right, of Orla is different than that's halacha Moshe Sinai. And Kilayim is divrei sefer, but according to the other opinion, really both of them are divrei sefer. So he says In other words, since the prohibition in Chutz La'aretz is different, one is halacha Moshe Sinai, the other one is midivrei sofrim. So therefore, it makes sense that a suffix, something which is suffix orla, in other words, we're unsure as to which year it is for this tree, and something which is suffix kilayim. In other words, it was, a farmer has kilayim on his field. We don't know if this produce was from that field or not, right? The Tanakh, and we see there's a difference between the Sveikos, where the Tanakh would learn in the Mishnah, suffix orla ba'aretz. If it's something suffix orla in Eretz Yisrael, asur. In Syria, which is outside, or not part of this, there was mutter, and B'chutz La'aretz even further than Syria, right? And Syria was close, right? It was conquered, but it wasn't really technically part of there itself. And B'chutz La'aretz, Yared v'leikeach, right? A person even can go ahead and buy Yerena like it. But however, it's and the condition that basically he doesn't see him, the non-Jewish seller, will go ahead and take from that tree. In other words, he can assume maybe it was from his good stuff, not necessarily from the suffix tree. So as long as he can do that, even that is mutter chutz la'aretz. V'ilo gabi kilayim, but when it comes to kilayim, we learn it says keren netua yarek v'yarek, right? Nemkar chutzalo. So let's say someone goes ahead and buys some vegetables, but it's from an area that he's selling both vegetables and something which is also perhaps a potential kilayim. So if it's the Aretz in Eretz Yisrael, then it's Aser. The suffix kilayim is Aser. The Surya is Mutter, and B'chutz La'aretz, and even further than Surya, Yared v'leikate. Then he can go and buy Ubachalo Yuko Biyad, as long as he doesn't take it with his hand. In other words, he himself doesn't do it, right? But if he sees the non-Jew take from this, right, from the suffix, then it's okay. Then the suffix kilayim is okay. So there's a difference. The other one says you can't even see, and this one says you can see. So according to Ula, yes, it makes a lot of sense that the two cases are different. Why? Because one is Aser halacha Moshe Sinai, and the other is only Aser midivrei sofrim. Eladitcha, but according to you, Nisni, zevazeh yared v'lokech, zevazeh yared v'leikate. Either say you can go ahead and buy it as long as you don't see it, or you can go ahead and take it. In other words, they should have the same ruling, right? Both in suffix or suffix kilayim, because their prohibitions are both midivrei sofrim. So he answered, no, yeah, Amar Shmuel Ravanan, Shmuel said Ravanan, Satani, yeah, it's indeed, you have to teach the same one across the board. Either both of them are Yared V'Lokech, and the other one is Yared V'Leikate, and one other version of it is Mabarei Ravina Masina, it says L'Kula, it says Zevazeh, both of them, in the case of Savik Orla or Savik Kilayim, in Chutz La'aretz, Zevazeh, Yared, he can go down, V'leikate, and take it, you he can go ahead and watch the guy go ahead and do it, as long as the Jew, he himself doesn't go ahead and take it himself. All right, we'll stop here. Shkoyach, everybody. So tomorrow, Mitzvah Hashem, we will.